Ayers Dugout, Ayers Reef, this whole area right here, all up here in Ayers Bay. You got the second chain islands that are right there. You can incorporate those as well if you so choose. Lots of these fish are in and around shell, on shell, hard packed sand, all that kind of area like that. A lot of this area has that in it. The second chain's got some squishiness mud around there, so if you're going to get out and wade that, just be aware of that. Some of the islands are fine, some of it's a little squishy, like I say, but it's all it's good. Um, Now, the thing that's been difficult for us this past week is that our bite frames have been very short. Not a lot of bites in those bite frames, so you've had to be extremely patient during these time frames. Outside of that, outside of a major or a minor, in and around that time frame, we're scratching. We're having to scratch to get these fish to eat. Right now, this trout bite, if that's what you're primarily looking for, if you're getting on the water by 6:15, you're doing pretty good. By 9:30ish, 10 o'clock, the trout bite's pretty well done. At least it has been up in these areas here that we've been fishing. That's been the consensus that's going on day in and day out. That time frame has been really short. Short bite windows, not a tremendous amount of opportunity. So you really you can't miss. Even in this new moon phase, it's what we've got going on. We've got these high pressure that comes in during the day, high winds. So it's really been a battle. So that's just something you have to understand. I touched on it last week, is that these 3 months that are coming up for us, June, July, and August, are 3 hardest months for people that throw artificials. And that's primarily, or all that I do is throw that, as many of you well know. And if that's your case as well, then you've probably had some of these struggles in the past week if you've been able to fish. The things that we've been locating, if you've got some deeper water that's close to these areas like that, we've been able to maybe kind of extended that bite somewhat. But other than that, it's been difficult. It's been really tough, and we've had to really work our tails off to get fish to eat. Redfish, on the other hand, if you can locate some fish laying up somewhere, maybe in some of these back lakes or some of these areas where they can get in and get out, we've located some redfish in those types of areas. Out here on the dugout and the second chain, it's been primarily trout. That's what we've looked for. That's primarily what we've targeted, and then we've had to go and locate some redfish. Main things that we've been throwing the supermodel in the down south, and chicken of the sea, supernatural, magic grass have been the main ones we've been throwing there. Of course, now also the twisted tea and big papa in the supermodel, and then in the original size, chicken of the sea. Watermelon red has been very good in the original size. Twisted tea, big papa in that as well. Maybe even stick in a little white ice, and some of the winds that we've been having has blown some of these areas out, so you have to kind of be careful what you're going to throw to get into some of that area. So that's where the watermelon red has been very good for us, because it's been kind of a bridge over type of bait that we can throw in both semi-clean water and dirty water. In the knocking tails, your heavy metal have been good in your cleaner water. Greenback has been good. Of course, Rogue has been money for us for a while now. We've been throwing it either or in the clean water or dirty water. It doesn't really matter, or stained water. We've been locating fish with it as well. Again, our bite frames have been short, have been really small windows. So get on the water. If trout is what you're really wanting to look for, and that's what you want to target, then get on the water, right at daybreak. You can work top water against the shoreline while that low light conditions are in play. But as that sun begins to climb, you better get ready just to kind of move and transition with those fish as they're coming off the shallower water and kind of getting out into that little bit deeper water. As long as you got some structure that's around there and you got some bait working in those particular areas, you're going to be okay. You'll give yourself opportunities, and that's what we're looking for in and around these time frames during this month and in the months that are coming ahead. Those limited opportunities will come, so don't miss when you get them. The Mott, Long Reef, all these areas out here, these reefs that continue on, all out here in the Bay system. We've had a little bit of water drop out here now that the big moon, the full or new moon has come into play. We've had a little higher tides really early in the morning, but then as the day progresses, that water starts to drop back out. The shell, again, it's been key in and around that shell bank and shell bars and all that kind of stuff where we're finding our fish. Hard packed sand and grass has been the other key thing for us as well. There's still some fish that are hanging over a little bit of squishiness, a little bit of mud, a little grass, little shell that's mixed in there with it. We're locating fish in and around that as well, but not as much as what we're locating around the shell and that kind of stuff, that type of structure. As long as you got some bait that's working in and around this area here, as you come up toward Jaybird, you got Jaybird Reef that's out there. You got the Point. You got Spalding Reef. You've got all that's all back in these areas here. So you have some opportunities to locate you some fish on one of these particular reefs. If you don't locate it on one, then skip to the next one and work the next one. Main things that we're looking for in and around this kind of stuff here is that main thing is the bait. Got to make sure that you locate some bait that's working in and around these particular areas. Like here on the Spalding Reef, you got a big, nice, long reef. You got some deeper water as you get closer to these reefs that are over here on the edge of the ICW. Some of those have produced some fish, not consistently, but we're locating a fish or two here or there. We have to work on them for a little bit. But again, what I said in the last video, the bite windows right now are really short. I mean, you may catch half a dozen to a dozen fish, and then boom, it shuts right back off. So you really got to be adept at what you're trying to do and kind of zero in on those baits. So if you've got multiple personnel that are with you that are fishing these particular areas, have different baits on everybody's rods and see if you can't dial it in a lot faster. Again, if you're going to leave the dock super early while it's still dark, be careful while you're running. Make sure your running lights are on just for safety purpose. And that's the main thing that we want to deal with there. But some of these bite frames that are in and around these reefs, whether it be on the shorelines, over the hard-packed sand, your trout bite is super early now. It will probably continue to be that way for a little while. If you want to go target redfish, then you can wait a little bit before you get on the water if that's what you so choose. You can locate some of those in and around here. Again, we've been locating those up around the shell bars and shell beds that are up close to the shoreline, working the shoreline edges. These mouths that dump out from the back lakes are there. Some of that water that's back in there later in the morning in these back lakes have gotten really warm. I mean, we're touching mid-90s on some of these spots back there, so that's really tough for these fish to deal with that. So if you got some type of freshwater inlet that's coming in from the bay, or if you all go all the way over to Vincent's or over to Cedar, somewhere in that area as well, where you got that fresh Gulf water that's flowing through there, the water temperature's a tad bit cooler. So it's significant. So it makes a difference. Those fish want that temperature change and want to be in more comfortable water. They're no different than we are when we get hot. We want to find somewhere where it's nice to be cool to get into. But again, supermodels, same flavors that I had mentioned earlier: Chicken of the Sea, Magic Grass. Supernatural's been good, especially if you got clearer water. Those flavors have been pretty good as far as the originals go. If you've got some white ice, maybe even Bone Diamond, depending on what your water clarity is, Twisted Tea, Big Papa, those have been very good for us. And then, of course, the Knock and Tail, same flavors as, the greenbacks. Rogue have been good. And Marker 54 bouncing around the shell in both the original jerk shrimp and then, of course, the popcorn shrimp that they've got. Of course, that was pretty good around that full moon that we had, but we're in this new moon right now. So by the time when you get into this week, you may want to make sure that you have maybe one or two of those in there, because it's been fairly effective in and around these shell bars and reefs there, grass beds, grass edges. A lot of these shorelines have got plenty of good grass, so you can find some good holes that are in there, and those fish are laying in and up around those things. Again, majors and minors have been our key thing that we focused on and fished in and around those time frames. But again, the bite frames have been very short, so super small windows. Be very efficient when you do those types of things when you're fishing that, so you can locate your fish and stay on them. Up here on Bayside, all the way down to North Pass as you go into Mission Bay, you've got some scattered reefs that are out here a little bit deeper that have been, they were once upon a time, they were pretty prevalent out there in Copano Bay, and you had to watch out for them. Now, not so much since Harvey's done it and all the oystering has done it, so it's knocked them all down. But they're deeper down in the water, which is not a bad thing right now. So you'd have to really check your depth on this to make sure if you could wait or not. You probably have to get on top of the reefs, depending on what our tide levels are, how much it drops out, and what it's doing. But you can, at some points in times, you can wade these if it's not too terribly deep for you. It just depends on what you're comfortable with. We've been into some water this past week where we were, chest deep, fishing out in a little bit deeper water, and that's where our fish were found, over some deeper grass. As you work down the shoreline here, up closer to the shoreline, you got shale that's up in here inside of Mission Bay. You can get up here on the right-hand side. I know I've talked about this in the past. To a point, this is wadeable, but once you get further back into Mission, it's very difficult to wade that until you get to the very back shoreline where Mission River dumps in, or Mission Lake. You can get back there on that back shoreline there, and we found some fish that's been cruising up and down that back shoreline. All this grass and shale and sand that's out here on the front. We come down here toward Copano Reef. This particular reef here, you can wade it. It's not too terribly deep at all, especially when you got your lower tides, and you've got lots of opportunity as you come down toward the middle here. There's lots of little scattered reefs that are in and around here where we found fish tucked in around that. Some of that, you may just want to stay in the boat and drift it and throw your plastics over the top of that and work, and you can find some fish. Where the areas are where you can bail out and get on the reef and fish it, depending on the windward or leeward side of the reef and what kind of wind that you got. It sets itself up really nice, and a little bit deeper, cooler water, those fish are hanging off and that kind of stuff. So we've had some moderate success with that. But again, our bite frames have been short. They've been very small. They haven't lasted very long. So you really got to make hay while you can. This back shoreline down here by the cliffs and everything, all that area there has been okay. We've scratched a fish out here or there, redfish here or there, flounder ever so often, a few scattered trout. The one thing that we had, a bunch of smallies, bunch of small trout there and there. So you really have to be patient and catch you a few before you catch you a solid fish that's in there. But they're there. More so coming off the reefs than so much the sand area on this backside. Now with the winds that we've had in the past few days, all this particular area gets blown out pretty fast. So you have to kind of keep that stuff in mind when you're fishing here in Copano and what kind of conditions that you're going to have at some point in time. Again, supermodels in the Magic Grass, Chicken of the Sea has been very good for us, and those two flavors specifically out here. The original size, again, the same colors, Big Papa, Chicken of the Sea there. Watermelon Red has been good. So also the Watermelon Red in the Little Johns have been good, and the Provokers for them. Those have been pretty good, have done progressively pretty good. Double D, topwater baits, all have been okay. We've caught fish on them, just not tons and tons and tons. It's primarily been our plastics have been the main thing that's been producing for us. And I can tell the same thing. Greenbacks, heavy metal, Rogue. They've got a nice Watermelon Red that's on there as well. So glass minnow, smoke flavored, those are a little bit smaller baits. This worked as well, depending on what your clarity of your water is. If it's not too blown out, but you got that nice little, not too bad of a stain, but and semi-clear, depending on how much grass that you got, those flavors have worked very well for us as well. Again, take advantage of this new moon that's in play. It's going to be here for a few more days before we start transitioning away from it toward the end of the week. This whole area, all the way toward down Turtle Pen, you can find you a spot and just work it. Just work up and down it. I could say the structure, bait's been the key thing. There's a tremendous amount of bait that's up and down the shoreline, no matter where you're at. Gets a little bit scarce as you get on the reef, but it's still there. But again, these fish are once that sunshine gets up a little higher around 8:30 to 10 o'clock. That's when your bite's going to progressively just kind of die off. So really, if you can get on the water, right at daybreak, you do yourself a favor. 6:15ish, something like that. 6:30, you'll do well. You can find some fish and get some opportunities to find and catch you some fish in these areas. Again, majors and minors, make sure that you incorporate those into your days, especially right now in these tougher months.